Welcome to the Reddit library. Men of Reddit, what creepy things have women done to you? Was seeing the girl for like 6-ish weeks. We went out one night and she said she had to work late the next day but wanted to come over after. So I gave her my apartment spare key because why not, and told her to let herself in. I ended up falling asleep waiting for her. I woke up at like 12 AM and noticed there was like a TV light on in the living room. I just figured she was watching something and maybe grabbing a snack before she came to bed. I got up to say hi, rounded the corner, and she was on my computer sifting through my Facebook. I asked her what she was doing, and it was obvious she had no idea I was awake and freaked out. Needless to say, I told her to give me my key back and showed her the door. Funny thing is, if she asked I would have let her look. I had nothing to hide. I would have thought it was weird, but everyone has their trust issues. But doing something like that behind my back was not cool. To this day I never leave my computer without hitting Win-L to lock it. My ex stabbed me with scissors. When I got home one night she insisted that, since I didn't answer her calls, that I was cheating on her. I was not. Scissors went 3 inches into my gut. In a daze of confusion I wrestled her to the floor in an attempt to stop her attack. I woke up 4 days later to learn her brother, who, while I was trying to subdue her, thought I was attacking her, hit me in the head with a cast iron skillet. 12 stitches and a slightly worse short-term memory later, I said to myself I'm never talking to her again. Don't stick your man part, stay with a hot girl when you know some screws are loose. In this thread not enough people talk about the outcome after the incident. Did either face charges? I was at the grocery store with my wife, then 2-year-old daughter, and twin then infant sons. My wife was pushing a double stroller with our daughter and one of the boys in it, and I was carrying the other, who was calmly cuddled up to my shoulder. We're in the produce section when some random middle-aged woman that I had never seen before spots us, makes a beeline towards me, stretches out her hands, and tries to take my kid out of my arms. She didn't look at my wife or me, didn't say a word to either of us. She just literally tried to grab my son from me with no prompting or invitation whatsoever. I stepped away from her and shielded my kid. My wife chased her off. That wasn't the only weird creepy middle-aged / older woman to come out of the woodwork when the twins were still babies, but she was the most frightening. How did she react when you and your wife started getting defensive? Did she give any reasoning? It's so bizarre. She didn't say a word, just walked away when my wife asked what the duck she was doing and told her to go away. She was silent literally the entire time. When I was in middle school, a friend of mine was absolutely fascinated by the fact that I had pubes. Didn't want to see my man part, just the pubes. This girl who works at my mom's work, their servers, always tells my mom she's going to marry me and thinks I'm cute. It wasn't a big deal at first, but it got out of control for a little bit there. Commenting heart eyes and inappropriate remarks on any post my mom made with me tagged in it. She finally followed me on Instagram and liked every one of my 700 something posts. And here comes the worst part. She starts messaging me through Instagram and I didn't reply once, but she begins having a conversation with her solo with me in my inbox. Like asking questions and answering them for herself and replying as if I said something and saying things like I heard from your mom that you're going through a rough time, and opens up to me about her past, which is a long and inappropriate thing to send to someone who hasn't even replied. This is among many other creepy things she's done to me. She doesn't bother me anymore though, just the occasional like on a picture. Like 700 photos? That takes at least a good hour's worth of commitment. I was at the pub with some friends, and one of them left a scarf at an alpaca table. She was feeling socially awkward and asked me to get it. I thought no big deal, I'll get it and show her there's nothing to be worried about. I asked a woman in her early 20s, I was 1'8", if she could pass me the scarf. She got up, walked over to me, wrapped it around my neck, and proceeded to try choke me with it, really going for it. Her hands were shaking from the force she was putting into pulling the two ends of the scarf. The pub was packed, but everyone just stood there not exactly sure of what was happening, myself included. After what felt like ages, two guys pulled her back to her table. They were looking at me worried, shaking their heads with faces that said we have no idea. Everyone around the table clearly knew her and was shocked by her behavior. I can't help but think about how differently this would have played out if the genders were reversed. If a man did that to a woman in a crowded pub, he'd get thrown out and the police would be called. I'm still confused. Edit. My top comment ever is 3 words. So am I. It was so baffling. I was never really scared during the whole thing. Just confused as duck. Years and years back I worked in a call center and was friends with this girl. Didn't think anything of it until she propositioned me to have sex with her. While I was flattered, I told her I was dating someone else and I was not going to cheat. Forward to a few days later, I go into work and get pulled into ours. Turns out she's now filed a sexual harassment claim against me. She worked in one area away from me, but they decided I needed an assigned seat beside my supervisor so that we would have no interaction period. I was fine with that until her friends started sitting not far from me, usually right in front of my field of view, and she'd come over and sit and talk to them, antagonizing the situation. My boss saw what was going on and brought it up to ours. She was pushing the situation, but it was her words, not mine or my boss. Few more weeks of me being watched like a hawk go by, and I go into work only to find security and my boss waiting for me. Apparently she felt that me looking in her general direction was harassment enough, so she filed another claim, this time saying I've been sending explicit messages and emails to her. This time my boss fought for me, but I got sent home, walked out in front of the entire call center surrounded by security. I remember writing an email to ours and management that night stating I had absolutely zero contact with her since the night she propositioned me and offered my computer, a lie detector, anything to prove my innocence as long as they would question her. Well, they apparently brought that to her and she ends up confessing that she made the whole thing up and that she did that to another employee and got them fired because they turned her down. They let her keep her job, in fact gave her a fat severance package a few months later. I got stuck in the same punish seat, being threatened that if I told any coworker what happened I'd be fired. I left a few weeks after that, but she had ruined my reputation. In that line of work I couldn't find a job for anything for a while. Few years down the line she spots me on a dating app and tried to hit me up. To this day I still don't get it. Holy duck balls, would I sue that employer? 3rd week of May of 1993. I broke up with my girlfriend, but she still had my choir letter jacket. We were in high school, but going to different high schools. Last day of school, I walked from my high school to her house to get my letter jacket. I get to her house and I see she is not home, so I sat towards the other end of the street waiting for her. Hours later, she finally comes home, so I start walking towards her house. She goes inside. I wait a bit, knock on the door, and say, "Melinda, I just want my choir letter jacket, and I'll leave you alone." 30 minutes go by and finally she comes out with it. I'm ready to walk home, but no, she offers a ride home, to which I say, "Okay, but I have no interest in talking." Get home and she leaves. Jump to fall of 1993. I'm working at JC Penney's in their optical area. Close for the night. Come out and notice some guy parked next to my car. Blow it off. Leave, and after a few miles, I notice this guy is following me. Okay, time to drive to the police station. I stop at a gas station that had a payphone and call the non-emergency phone number for the police and told them the situation. I drive to the police station, and as I get closer, the officer stops me and the car following me gets barricaded in by 2 police cars. I found out this person was a retired Texas sheriff that had been hired by my ex, whose father is also a retired Texas sheriff, to keep tabs on me. He gets brought inside, and I talk him into calling my ex and tell her he got arrested for following me and she had to come bail him out. So she shows up with her dad and crud hits the fan. I ended up putting a restraining order on the ex-sheriff along with her entire family. 5 years later, she sent me an invitation to her wedding. I mailed it back with no postage, written on the invitation, "Duck off." When I picked up my 90-day chip in an AA meeting, this old lady seductively kissed my neck and told me congrats. While not interested, I still sprang a boner. RAA, the goods are odd, but the odds are good. And you don't have to pay for her drinks. Came back to the dorm to find a girl who I didn't know waiting for me. I had apparently served her food once at the campus food place I worked at. She figured out who I was and where I lived without even my name. Not sure how I managed to shoo her out peacefully, but I did. Sucked my blood from an opened scab without informing me she was about to do so. She considered herself a vampire. You just ruined my dinner. Had a disagreement over buying her some new outfit dress thing. With the supposed victory going to me with "we don't have the money right now and we'll see next paycheck" compromise. About an hour later, while I was cooking dinner, she came up and apologized, then came in for a hug which started nice and somewhat affectionate, but ended with her pulling her arms away very quickly across my back. This was to have the 2 razor blades she had sliced to deep slashes across my back. She ran away and locked herself in the bathroom. I called 911 and went got stitches and all the medical things. Had insurance, thankfully. Obviously the relationship ended then and there. Looking back like 15 years later, it is really strange as we were together for about 3 years and didn't have any major fights or physical altercations before that happened. It was so trivial with some massive escalation, but in the end it taught me that yes, I can cut someone out of my life. Figuratively, woo puns, holy duck man. Did you press charges? Did you break up with her through some bullet resistant glass or in a suit of armor? Lol, in a situation like this, I don't think a breakup needs to occur. It's funny imagining having to awkwardly break up with someone after they've stabbed you. You literally stabbed me in the back. Just started dating. Showed her a pic of my son. She then asked what I was going to do with him once we had kids. Well, at least she did you the courtesy of filtering herself out rather than making you figure this out way down the line. A girl I had been dating for just a couple weeks invited me to her mom's house for dinner. Halfway through dinner I finally noticed that they had printed out pictures of me from MySpace. This was back when MySpace was normal, put them in frames, and randomly interspersed them with other family pictures throughout the house. They were laughing hysterically at my reaction. I told them, very plainly and very seriously, that if it was a joke, it was hilarious. But if it wasn't, they never actually answered whether it was a joke or not. We didn't date much longer than that. The opposite of this is known as manly piecing. You take a framed photo of yourself to another person's house and sneakily leave it displayed in a prominent place. Or optionally switch a picture they already have for one of yourself. Edit. Since this has become one of my more popular comments, I would like to give proper credit. I first became aware of the term manly piecing when it was used by college humor writer and comedian Aaron Caro sometime around 2002-2002. This is where it originated. I can't find the original story by him or I'd share. Weird staring girl. When I was in high school, I noticed a girl just staring at me while I was eating lunch with friends in the cafeteria. I don't really think much of it that day. The next day I see the same girl just staring at me again. This time I think maybe this girl likes me or a friend sitting next to me. This girl is not ugly or anything, just a normal girl. This keep happening like almost every day for 2 weeks or so. She even eats food just staring at me. Sometimes I see her standing in the hall staring while I'm waiting for a class to start. Even when I went to the basement with another group of friends to have lunch, she is there. So after a hallway death stare incident, I get creeped out and tell my friends in a class about this. They don't believe me or make some jokes and laugh. So one day at lunch I whisper to my friends that this girl has been staring at me for 2 weeks. It's creeping me out. They look at her and tell me that they have noticed that too, but didn't say anything. I'm hoping it's just a weird crush she has, so I just end up going up to her and say just keep staring for 5 seconds. I say why do you keep staring at me every day? She continues staring for 30 seconds or so. I tell her to please stop doing that and walk away. Next day. Nope. There she is. Thank God she moved out to a different school after a few weeks. At least she didn't follow me to my home, I think.